So, what is string interpolation and why do Scala developers sometimes write strings like this and sometimes write strings like this? And, well, what difference does it make? The answer is that it allows easier concatenation of strings. So, let's say we have a variable called name, and then we want to add that variable into something like, hello, my name is name. And you know, there is a lot of code here just for adding in the name, and while it might not seem like a big deal right now, if you do that a lot of times it gets a little bit tiresome. So a while ago the Scala developers added a shorthand for this, which is that if you add an S before the string starts and you add a dollars, then you can replace all of that with simply a $sign before the string you want to put in. So if we run this again, we get exactly the same thing as before. Now, if you're coming to Scala from some other programming language like PHP, then you might be familiar with that PHP actually has a very similar feature as to some other languages. So we can actually define just hello, my name is, and you can see that it does exactly the same thing as the Scala version, except we didn't need an S in front. So why does the Scala version require this S? Well, this feature, like so many other Scala features, actually has a lot more to it than immediately meets the eye. This S in front actually means that instead of just creating a regular Java string, you initialize a string context, as it's called, and you pass through it all the regular, string parts, and then you give it the stuff you want to interpolate into it, like this. And you can see that it does exactly the same thing. Now, if this gets your brain going and you start wondering, well, if S is just a regular method on the string context, could I call any other method on string context in this way? And the answer is yes. And not just that, it is also compatible with implicit conversions. So by adding our own implicit conversions from string contexts, we can add our own versions of we can add our own methods of interpolating strings. So if we define our own implicit, let's see, my string context, which takes a regular string context like that, then we can define our own method like my S, which takes any of a list of Annies, and we just for now define that to be an alias for S. Then we can, if we revert here, my S, and you can see that it does exactly the same thing. We could also make it so that it quotes all the interpolated parts, simply by changing what it does with the argument here. So and you can see that it's now quoted, and if we add it again afterwards, yeah, it's still quoted, that one too. We could also, for example, restrict the types. So let's say we want to define an age variable. My age is, say, 5. then we could restrict this so that it only takes integers. And now, if we try to make 5 a string, well, that is a compilation error. Because, well, we said we only take integers, so we only take integers. But, you know, this seems a bit contrived. Are there any other use cases for why this feature is, you know, uniquely useful compared to regular string interpolation? Well, actually, yes. One case where relatively, you know, new developers in, for example, PHP often might go wrong is SQL queries. So let's say we define, well, we want to query for everything in the users table where the username is username and the password is password. Now, of course, this is not a good way to store passwords, but it's also problematic because while this works for now, kind of, let's say that I am a malicious user and I just want to and you know, I want to gain entry to your system, then I could just add like this, and you know, I comment out the and password bit, so you know, I can log on as any user, essentially. And this is known as a SQL injection. Now, with PHP string injection, string interpolation, you're pretty much screwed now. You basically have to abandon it, and you have to use this thing called, I think, for example, in the case of MySQL real escape string, and you need to call that on everything that you interpolate into the string, and you know, that's just a massive amount of boilerplate, and it's still not really secure. You really want to just communicate this interpolated stuff out of band. On the other hand, with Scala, since we have all this stuff separately, since we don't just make it a dumb string, or we don't just have to make it a dumb string, the string interpolation methods can return anything they want. We could just take this SQL query, and we could define some sort of SQL interpolator that actually resolves this in a reasonably secure manner. For example, by initializing a SQL query where these, you know, interpolated variables are actually communicated out of band separately from a prepared query. And that would just give us more secure SQL queries with less code, or you know, the same amount of code as the insecure PHP version, and I think that is a massive win. And just one case where the Scala way, while slightly more verbose perhaps for a newbie, you know, once you put some thought into it, it can really beat out the way that other languages have done it.